A reading from the book of Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, a time and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what was planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sue, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. He has made everything suitable for its time. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Our psalm appointed for this afternoon is the 23rd Psalm. We'll read the psalm responsively by whole verse. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
He makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters.
He revives my soul and guides me along right pathways for his name's sake.
Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me.
You spread a table before me in the presence of those who trouble me. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup is running over.
Surely your goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
A reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, and I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror, dimly, but when we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully. Even as I have been fully known, and know faith, hope, and love abide. These three, and the greatest of these is love. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow between the crosses. Row on row, they mark our place. And in the sky, the larks still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
As you are able, would you all please stand? The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to St. John.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Jesus said, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way to the place where I am going." Thomas said to him, "Lord, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way?" Jesus said to him, "I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated.
Thank you guys for being here to honor our father, Burnham Edson. There's a lot of familiar faces here, and I'm sure each and every one of you have a special memory about our dad. St. Aidan's has a lot of memories for our family. My parents were married here. My grandparents were married here. We were all baptized here, so it's a very special, meaningful place. So again, thank you. Some of the memories I'd like to share with you about my father is just how fun Dad was growing up. You know, our annual ski trips, playing on the Nonquit Beach and at Barney's Joy, the ball game up the stairs. But one of my favorite all-time vacation memories, and Beppy, you may remember this, is when we went to Mexico. Dad did not want to go because he's not a big fan of the sun. You know, he always had the towel over his head. Didn't want to get. But anywho, Dad drank the water in Mexico. And he got Montezuma's revenge, if you can imagine. And he swore he would never go back to Mexico. And he never did. Another thing about my father was just his work ethic and how intellectual he was. I mean, here's a man who would get up at 6 a.m., go to work, prepare for the news all day, do the 5 and 6 o'clock news, and then come home at 6:45 sharp for dinner for one of Mother's delicious meals at 7 o'clock promptly. And then he would go back and do the 10 o'clock news, if you can believe that. And he would do the same thing over and over for many years. It's just unbelievable. I mean, who does that? Lastly, I just want to say is his love. You know, his love for his 4 grandchildren, Bennett, Capon, Sia, and Caroline. Unfortunately, my daughter and wife are in Mexico, so they couldn't be here, of all places. His love for Emily, Kate, and I, but most importantly, his love for my mother. We love you, Dad. We miss you. Rest in peace, and God bless.
So, for those who don't know, I'm Kate, middle child, and what I want to do is kind of take you on a little journey back in time. My parents built what they thought would be their forever home, and almost made it to the very end, in Fort Smith, Arkansas. My dad developed this little area called Lee's Hollow, and that's where we grew up. And it was the most amazing childhood. Let's start in the beginning. The driveway could have probably been about 40 yards long. Instead, it was almost a half a mile because he He needed it to wind through and around every single dogwood tree, and he wouldn't cut down any trees. He's very much a nature lover. And he wanted to make sure that every tree was sacrificed, every little creek was gone around, and that every piece of nature could be fully enjoyed. Let's move on to the inside part. The house itself was built around said trees, as well as all the other things that we all thought were beautiful growing up, but that he was it was really important to him that we were in the middle of nature. The house was actually built around the dogwood trees, so you can imagine the architect thinking that was a little odd, but regardless, it was a beautiful home. He made a wraparound deck so that he could see nature in every way that he possibly could, and so that on every beautiful night he could sit outside and enjoy my mother's delicious meals. And just so that we could all be playing outside all the time, whether that was because he just wanted us kids out of the house, or because he just, I think he wanted to play with us just as much as we wanted to play with him, and he was so much fun to play with. He got into it. Go-karts and, all of it, basketball goals, and, just he really was into playing. Okay, so anyway, walking into the house, what you'll find, just to give you a little. So what you'll find when you walk into the house is you'll find a kitchen, and the kitchen has a little table in it that'll have all the chairs, just enough for our family. And around those chairs, we would sit every single night. He wouldn't miss a night, and he would ask us very in-depth questions just to get our minds going, just to get us thinking about things that are important in life, not just how was your day, but things that really made us think, And I value those talks to this day, and I think it's all really made us better people, for lack of a better term. Moving past the kitchen, we would, travel on down to the little den, and you'll find his chair. There's several chairs throughout the house that were just his. He would always be sitting at these chairs, and you couldn't sit in those chairs, or else he'd have something to say. He would just give you a little bit of a look, like, Tater, I think you know whose chair that is. And so you'd have to get up and move accordingly. So he had his little chairs. He had his other little spots where he needed to see nature. In that chair, he was able to see his little squirrels. He would chirp to the birds. He had a really good chirp. He could actually sound like a real bird. And he would watch the birds and all their little bird feeders, and he would have he was okay with the squirrels kind of getting the birds food because he wanted to see them jump and do their thing. And then also, we always had a dog, and he always had that dog sitting by him. He might even be okay with like a little kitty family living in the attic because he didn't want to hurt that little kitty family or make them go to, a bad situation. He would let them have their babies and do their thing and then, do whatever he had to do. And there was always, it seems to me, that there was always a bird's nest in the wreath on the front door. And so we never used that front door all spring long, ever. We would have to walk around to some other door. We would walk through the garage, we'd walk to a back door, it didn't matter, but we didn't get to use that front door because of the bird's nest. He refused. We weren't going to pick up the wreath, move it. We were not to disrupt these little baby birds that were chirping. So anyway, inside also, you'd find in the dining room It always seemed to be tax season. It didn't matter. It was tax season in July, August, September, October, November. It did not matter. I am not touching a button. I'm sorry.
You gotta
Constantly?
just tell turns green.
3 seconds.
Tap the button once.
Oh,
It should go green.
now it went off.
Let me see. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, and even on those days where the taxes weren't being done, the tax books were splayed out, and it was a remarkable amount of tax books. So, and there was no tax man. He refused. That was his job. He was very intent on that. I'm sure there was, but he wanted to do the majority of it to feel like this was something he could accomplish. So that was these are just memories, just beautiful memories, and some of it, at the time I was like, ugh. But now I love these thoughts. Walking through, then you find, going into his study. I loved his study. There was just books everywhere. My friends would come over and be like, surely he hasn't read that many books. I'm like, we take boxes to the library yearly. I mean, this man can read some books, hardly any of which are, fiction. They're all nonfiction. And I think it's because his mind could come up with his own little stories. He was off in his own little la la land, and he was creating his own stories. Almost everything was, autobiographical or whatever it was, autobiographies. And so he just read and read and read. He was so interested in history and the way that, just the shaping of the world and so on and so forth. And he was very interested and always wanting to learn. No matter the subject, he wanted to learn it. And then you would always find in there also his little typewriter, like up until 5 years ago, probably. He had the real deal peck, peck, peck. It was impressive. And that little noise, I will never forget. The sound of the typewriter coming from his den, or coming from his study. Again, in the main living room, you'll find his chair sitting next to the fireplace. Upstairs, so walking up the stairs, you're going to find some mishaps. There's going to be some tennis ball indentations in the walls because, Will mentioned it briefly, the ball game up the stairs is a game where you throw the ball to the kids and then you get to move up a step if you catch it, and then move up another step and move up another step. Well, it got to the point where we all got to be pretty good. And so he would bounce it off the wall, and then it got to be serious. It would go ceiling, wall, and I mean, it was a real game. And it was very competitive. And then we started getting our dogs involved, and it was like, who's got the better dog? Whose dog is the most agile and coordinated? And so this was a real thing. And then the dogs learned how to step up one step and step up one step. I mean, it was fun. But needless to say, it didn't do, the paint had to get repainted yearly. Okay, so, and then, upstairs, big maps of the world, and, I want you to just close your eyes and pen it, and I want you to just imagine what it would be like to live there, and, could you see yourself there, and just always thought-provoking, I just loved everything about his smell, his in the bathroom. It was like his little shaving cream smell, and there's so many beautiful, beautiful memories I have of him, and I want so badly to just remember him in those times. I really felt like he was such a good father. He really made me think. He got me interested in so many things outside of what Arkansas would typically have to offer. And I really loved him so much. I really did.
Thank you all so much for coming. It means so much to my family that you took the time to come today and remember our sweet dad and support my sweet mama. For me, my dad was the very best of all the dads. He was a very kind dad. He was a kind man, but he was a really kind dad. until he was made miserable by his health issues in recent years. I think I really never heard him say an unkind word to anyone or about anyone. And I didn't even notice until I was probably in my 20s. I was in the car with my mom, and Mom turned to me. She's like, "Have you ever heard Dad say anything mean?" And I was like, I really don't think I've ever heard him say anything bad about another person. When we vented about someone, he sort of sat and he listened with a small smile on his face, but he would never seem tempted to pile on. He was never gossipy. He was never petty. He really took no pleasure in pointing out anyone else's shortcomings or their insecurities of others. And he taught us that everyone's carrying their own story, to be compassionate and to never make another person feel small. He was a very fun dad, as you've heard. He was really the king of playing with his children. He was always up for a game, and he was always inventing new games. The game playing started very early, and it became ritualistic, and it never stopped. My earliest memory, I think, with my dad in game playing was bath time. And he would hold our little bodies, we would lean out, and he would start shaking. He would start singing the Kentucky Fried Chicken theme song. It's nice to feel so good about a meal. And he'd get faster and faster. So good about Kentucky Fried. And then by the end, we're all jiggling. So I cannot take a bath now without thinking of Kentucky Fried Chicken, singing Kentucky Fried Chicken. Ball game up the stairs. You have heard about the ball game up the stairs now. That was a big one in our family. Airports. He invented a game in airports. We're in the terminal, a long terminal, a very crowded terminal. The rule was you could not divert from your path and you could not change your pace. So whoever was in front of you, people in wheelchairs, big groups, big family groups, monks, it didn't matter. You could not step aside. You had to wait for the other person to move. So it was like a game of chicken. It was a very interesting psychological experiment. His car, he had a beautiful Isuzu Trooper, which had multiple colors because he would replace the pieces of the car different times with different car parts. So it was a silver Isuzu Trooper for the majority with a brown door, I think was the last iteration. Blue and tan door. He tied a rope to the back of the car. We strapped on our roller blades. And this driveway that Kate talked about that we sort of water ski-esque through the neighborhood, crashing off into the ditches and into the trees. Millions of tennis ball tosses off of some structure as we jumped into a body of water. So off the pier, off the diving board, off a cliff. He would sit there for hours and throw us tennis balls to catch. If we missed, he would screech, "Butterfingers, Butterfingers." And it was very obnoxious, but extremely motivating to become a tennis. At restaurants, he always had something to do with a salt shaker. So whether it was sort of balancing the salt shaker on the edge, or this game where we would slide the salt shaker across the table and it had to land just on the edge, but not flop off, but it had to be off the edge. So we had a lot of salt-related activities at restaurants. Hours of basketball in the driveway. He was terrible. He was an egregious fouler, but he played with me all the time in the driveway, often in his tie and his shirt from work. Even last summer, when he was feeling miserable, he had a game that he invented of blowing bubbles with his grandchildren using Dawn dishwashing soap and his OK sign, and who could make the biggest bubble. It was always games. He was also a very, very supportive dad in ways small and large. He was the very best at untangling the dreadlocked, salt-encrusted tangles from our hair. And he really took a lot of pride in how he could gently coax our hair into submission. When I accidentally drove the car through the closed garage door during a particularly stressful stick shift driving session, he just turned and he looked at me and he giggled. He wrote really wonderful letters when we were apart that, of course, were not properly appreciated at the time, but when I've subsequently come across them in boxes or in the bottom of drawers, I'm struck by how really sweet they are, how full of joy and love. He celebrated that which made us unique, and he rejoiced in our oddities, our awkwardness, any unconventional choices. He always met something that was a little off or different that we said or that we did or that we believed with a proud smile and a twinkle in his eye. He did not judge. He had extremely big, strong opinions, but they were about sort of structural things or systemic things or political things, but not about human beings. He listened to us and he questioned us and he cared, but there was never a passive-aggressive quip, never a snide comment that stung and lingered, never sharp or cutting. He was very, very gentle with our hearts. Every day of my life, I knew that he loved me and he believed in me and he was proud of me. And I feel so lucky that I got to be his daughter. Thank you.